Waterwave Chapter 1. The Beach, the Dream, and the Language of Freedom. Emma lived in a small, beautiful town by the sea. Every morning, she woke up to the sound of waves crashing gently against the shore. The salty breeze entered through her window and filled her room with the scent of freedom. From her small wooden house, she could see the golden sand and the blue ocean stretching far into the horizon. But even though the view was perfect, her life felt small. Emma worked at a local cafe that served coffee, ice cream, and sandwiches to tourists. She enjoyed meeting new people, but every time someone spoke to her in English, she froze. She could only smile, nod, and say a few simple words. Sometimes, she pretended to understand just to avoid feeling embarrassed. Deep inside, she knew she was missing something important. If I spoke English, she often whispered to herself, I could have a better job. I could travel. I could connect with the world. One afternoon, Emma was cleaning the tables outside the cafe when she overheard a group of tourists trying to order. The waitress struggled to understand them. Emma wanted to help, but her fear stopped her. After they left, she sat alone by the sea, thinking about her life. She felt stuck in her routine, working hard but going nowhere. The world was moving fast, and she felt left behind. That night, as the waves shimmered under the moonlight, Emma made a decision. She would stop dreaming and start learning. The next day, she walked to the local community center. There was a free English class twice a week. She was nervous. Her hands were cold. Her heart was racing. But she stepped into the classroom anyway. In the beginning, it was hard. She didn't understand many words. She made mistakes. She felt frustrated. But she didn't give up. Slowly, she learned how to introduce herself, how to ask simple questions, how to listen. The other students were also afraid at first, and that made her feel less alone. Mistakes are part of learning, her teacher always said. Be proud that you're trying. Day by day, Emma's confidence grew. She started watching videos in English with subtitles. She listened to music and repeated the lyrics. She practiced with tourists when they came to the cafe. Each conversation, even the small ones, felt like a tiny victory. One sunny weekend, Emma was walking barefoot along the beach when she saw a group of international surfers setting up for competition. They were laughing, speaking fast, full of energy. Emma stood nearby, curious but nervous. Then one of them, a woman named Riley from Australia, turned to her and said, Hey, do you know any good places to eat around here? Emma's heart beat faster. But she smiled and replied, Yes, there's a great cafe near the lighthouse. I work there. Riley smiled. Awesome. Thanks. Your English is really good. Emma couldn't believe it. For the first time, a native speaker had complimented her English. That small moment meant everything. Later that evening, the surfers invited her to a beach bonfire party. Emma almost said no. Her old fear tried to come back, but she took a deep breath and said yes. The party was magical. There was music, laughter, and people from different countries sharing stories under the stars. Emma spoke in English, made new friends, and felt truly alive. She wasn't perfect, but she was brave. And that made all the difference. That night, as she walked home along the quiet beach, the ocean whispered around her feet. Emma realized something powerful. English wasn't just a language. It was a key that opened doors, hearts, and dreams. From that moment on, her life changed. She found the courage to apply for a job as a tour guide. She started leading visitors around her town, telling them about its history, nature, and secret spots. She met people from all over the world, and every new conversation helped her grow. Learning English gave me wings, she told her students months later. And now I'm flying. She still lived in the same town, still walked along the same beach, but her world was much bigger. And it all started with one decision: to learn. Vocabulary highlights: B1, B2 level.
Confined, limitado, preso. Overiarde, escutou sem querer.
Racing heart, coração acelerado. Confidence, confiança. Victory, Vittoria.
Bonfire, fogueira.
Magical, magico. Brave, corajosa.
Que chave.
Wings, Ozus. Waterwave Chapter 2. New Job, New Fears, and the Voice Within. The sun was just rising when Emma zipped up her blue tour guide jacket and looked at herself in the mirror. A small shell necklace hung around her neck, and her name tag rested over her heart. Emma, local guide, it said. She smiled nervously. Today was her first official tour with international guests. Her dream had come true. After weeks of studying English, practicing with tourists, and pushing past her fears, she had been offered a job by the town's tourism agency. They had noticed how well she communicated and how passionate she was about her coastal town. But now that the day had arrived, her confidence was shaking. What if I forget the words? What if they laugh at my accent? What if I make a mistake? Those questions echoed in her mind as she walked toward the meeting point near the old lighthouse. At 9 a.m., a group of 12 tourists gathered around her. They were from Canada, Sweden, Germany, and Brazil. They smiled, took pictures, and adjusted their sunglasses. Some looked excited, others a little tired from traveling. Emma took a deep breath. Good morning, everyone. My name is Emma, and I'll be your guide today. Welcome to our beautiful coastal town. I hope you enjoy this journey with me. She smiled and waited. The tourists clapped softly, some nodding and taking pictures of the lighthouse. Her voice had shaken slightly, but she had done it. The tour began. The first stop was the ancient stone bridge, built over a quiet stream that flowed into the sea. Emma explained its history, how fishermen once crossed it carrying heavy baskets of sardines, how kids used to jump into the water from its edges during summer. But halfway through her explanation, she forgot the word basket. Her mind went blank. The fishermen carried big containers, she said, trying not to panic. One tourist smiled and said, You mean baskets? Emma laughed nervously. Yes, baskets. Thank you. The group laughed with her, nodded her. The tension melted. One of the Brazilian tourists turned to her and said in a friendly voice, Your English is great. We understand everything. You're doing really well. Emma smiled wide. That simple moment gave her the strength to continue. Later, at the Sea Cliff Lookout, the wind blew hard. She tried to describe the importance of the cliffs to local legends, but some words escaped her again. She used her hands, expressions, and even a few drawings in the sand to explain. And surprisingly, the group loved it. Her creativity turned into a strength. One Swedish tourist approached her and asked, How long have you been speaking English? Just a few months, Emma replied, blushing. He looked surprised.
Wow.
You're amazing. Really. Emma felt proud, but she also felt something deeper, a sense of responsibility. She realized that this job wasn't just about walking people around. It was about making connections, representing her town, sharing stories that mattered. And to do that well, she needed to keep improving. That night, exhausted but happy, Emma sat by the window in her small home. The stars were bright, and the ocean whispered outside. She opened her notebook and wrote, Today I made mistakes. Today I was scared. But today I also grew. I want to speak better. I want to feel stronger. And I will. She made a plan. Every day, she would learn 5 new words. She would listen to podcasts in English while walking on the beach. She would talk to herself out loud, describing the world around her. She would even record her voice to correct her pronunciation. The next week, her tours became smoother. She stopped worrying so much about perfection and focused more on connection. She told funny stories, asked guests about their lives, and made them feel welcome. The words came more naturally. One afternoon, an older couple from Canada approached her after the tour. The woman had tears in her eyes. You made us feel something today, she said. You didn't just show us the town. You shared your heart. And that's something rare. Emma was speechless. For the first time in her life, she felt that her voice mattered. Not just in her language, but in English too. Vocabulary highlights, B1, B2. Nervously, nervosamente. Shaking, tremendo. Accent, sotaque.
Paniqued. Entrou em pânico.
Creativity, creatividade. strength, força, responsibility, responsabilidade,
Perfection, perfeição.
connection, conexo.
Specialist, sem palavras.
Emma was just getting started. She had fears, yes, but she had courage too. And each day, the English words she once feared began to feel like friends. The beach, the sun, the wind, everything around her stayed the same. But inside her, a new world was forming. A world where her voice carried across oceans. Waterwave Chapter 3. A letter, a choice, and the wind of change. The wind was stronger that morning. It carried the scent of wet sand and adventure. Emma sat at the cafe by the pier, sipping her coffee after a long early morning tour. The sea was restless, like her thoughts. She had just finished guiding a group of students from Denmark, and they had loved her energy, her stories, and her efforts to connect. One of the students even told her, "You should teach people how to speak like that. You make English feel alive." Emma smiled, but deep down, a strange question stirred. Was this the end of her journey, or only the beginning? That afternoon, back at home, she found an envelope on her doorstep. It had her name written by hand. No return address. Curious, she opened it and read, "Dear Emma, we heard about your excellent work as a local guide from a visitor who recently joined one of your tours. We are organizing a cultural exchange program that brings people from different countries to teach languages, share traditions, and work on community projects. We believe you would be a great fit for the team. The project will take place in Lisbon for 3 months, starting next month. Accommodation and meals will be covered. All you need is your courage, your voice, and your English. Warm regards, the Horizon Program Team." Emma stared at the paper, her heart thumping. Lisbon? A big city. New people. A new environment. For 3 whole months. She was excited. But she was scared. She walked to the beach to clear her mind. The sun was setting, painting the sky with deep orange and pink. The waves crashed harder than usual, as if calling her to move forward. The doubts came fast. What if I'm not good enough? What if I don't understand people in a bigger city? What if I fail? She sat on the sand, pulled her knees close to her chest, and breathed deeply. Then she remembered a sentence she had written in her notebook weeks ago. "I want to feel stronger. And I will." She whispered it again, like a spell. She thought about the girl she used to be. The one who avoided English conversations, who felt invisible, who didn't believe in herself. That girl still lived in her, but now she had company. A woman who had guided, connected, spoken, failed, learned, and grown. She made a decision. The next day, she sent her answer. "Yes, I'm ready." The following weeks were filled with preparation. She told her boss at the cafe and the tourism center, and to her surprise, they were thrilled for her. "You've done so much for this town," her manager said. "Now go and do more for the world." Emma packed her clothes, her seashell necklace, and the notebook that had captured her fears and dreams. She practiced English every day, focusing on vocabulary about culture, community work, and teamwork. She also had to face technical challenges, writing her biography in English, filling out forms, answering emails, attending online orientation calls. She made mistakes, sent one email without attaching the required document, misunderstood one meeting time, but she learned fast. When the day of her departure arrived, Emma stood at the bus station with her small suitcase. Locals came to say goodbye, old friends, cafe regulars, even a few tourists who had stayed longer in town. "You're brave," said one. "You inspire us," said another. Emma boarded the bus with tears in her eyes, but a smile on her face. Lisbon was loud, colorful, and full of life. The streets were steep, the trams clattered past, and voices in dozens of languages filled the air. Emma's first few days were overwhelming. She got lost. She struggled to follow fast conversations. She missed the quiet sound of waves. But then she met the other volunteers, a woman from Kenya, a man from Japan, 2 students from Italy, and a dancer from Colombia. They all had one thing in common. They had chosen to step into something new. Emma introduced herself in English. She told them about her beach town, her job as a guide, and how she had started learning English only months ago. They were amazed. "You're so brave," said Anna from Colombia. "You came alone?" Emma nodded.
Yes.
"But I don't feel alone anymore." Each day brought new challenges. Emma helped teach English to children in local schools, organized cultural walks for elderly citizens, and gave presentations in English about her hometown. Her words weren't perfect, but they were full of soul, and people listened. One evening, after a long event, her supervisor pulled her aside. "You know, Emma," he said, "what you bring is more than just language. It's heart. People feel that when you speak. You've become a symbol of what this program is about: courage, learning, and connection."
Emma didn't know what to say.
Her eyes filled with tears again. But this time, they were tears of joy. Vocabulary highlights: B1, B2. Overwhelming, a vacillator. Program, programa. Community project, proyecto comunitario. Biography, biografía. Step into, entrar embarcar. Sol alma. Symbol, símbolo. Departure, partida.
Requerido, exigido, necessário.
Steep, íngreme. Emma had crossed a bridge she never imagined she could. She left her beach behind, but carried it in her heart. She knew this was only the beginning of a bigger journey. A life where English wasn't just a goal anymore. It was her path, her voice, her future. Waterwave Chapter 4. The speech, the stare, and the spark. The hall was buzzing with voices. Flags from 12 different countries decorated the stage. Tables were set with brochures, notebooks, cups of coffee, and curious smiles from around the world. It was the biggest event of the Horizon program so far, and Emma was one of the main speakers. When they asked her to give a short speech about her journey, her first instinct was to say no. Her hands had started to sweat just thinking about it. Speaking in English during a tour was one thing, but standing on a stage under the lights, in front of professionals, volunteers, and partners?
That was terrifying.
But then she remembered the bus station. The goodbye hugs. The little girl who had hugged her in Lisbon after one of her workshops and said, "I want to speak English like you." Emma had come too far to say no now. The night before the event, she barely slept. She walked through her notes over and over again. She had written the speech herself, corrected it with a friend, practiced in front of the mirror, and even recorded her voice. Still, her stomach twisted with nerves. In the kitchen of the guest house, she ran into Miguel, a volunteer from Portugal she had worked with on a few cultural walks. He was calm, always smiling, and surprisingly good at making people feel safe. He noticed her expression. "You look like someone who saw a ghost," he joked gently. Emma laughed nervously. "I feel like one." "Big day tomorrow?" he asked, pouring tea into 2 mugs. She nodded. "I'm speaking at the opening. In English." He handed her a mug. "Then you'll do fine. You have something most people forget when they speak another language." "What's that?" "Heart," he said, tapping his chest. The next morning, the stage looked much bigger than she remembered. The host announced her name, and Emma walked up with shaky legs, holding her notes like they were her lifeline. She looked out at the crowd. Faces from different cultures. Eyes waiting. Cameras recording. She took a breath. "Good morning. My name is Emma, and I come from a small town by the sea. A few months ago, I was too afraid to speak English. I was even afraid to speak at all." She paused, then continued. "But something changed. I realized that the fear of speaking was not bigger than the dream I had to connect, to grow, to make a difference." She looked up from her notes, met their eyes. "English gave me a way to reach people, to share stories, to find courage I didn't know I had. And today I'm standing here, not because I speak perfectly, but because I refuse to give up." Applause burst from the room. Emma froze for a second, shocked, then deeply moved. People were clapping not just for her words, but for her honesty. Some stood up. A few wiped away tears. She saw Miguel in the crowd. He smiled and clapped too, slowly, like telling her, "I told you so." After the event, Emma was surrounded by people. Some asked for advice. Others shared their own stories. One woman from Turkey said, I used to be too shy to speak English, but after hearing you, I feel ready. Emma thanked them, hugged them, encouraged them. She had come to inspire, but now, she was being inspired too. Later that evening, she stepped out onto the terrace of the building. Lisbon's rooftops glowed under the setting sun. She leaned on the railing, breathing in the cool evening air, letting it all sink in. Then came the sound of footsteps. It was Miguel. I told you you'd be amazing, he said. Emma chuckled, her cheeks warm. You were right. I'm glad I didn't run away. He leaned next to her. You looked strong up there. Not just brave. Strong. They stood in silence for a moment, watching the city. Then he turned to her. I've worked with many people here, but with you, there's something different. Something I can't explain. Emma looked at him. Her heart skipped. The wind played with her hair. She smiled, unsure what to say, but her silence said enough. Over the next few weeks, something quiet and beautiful began to grow between them. Small talks became long conversations. Shared tasks turned into moments filled with laughter. One evening, while preparing materials for a school workshop, their hands touched as they reached for the same folder. Neither pulled away. Emma wasn't used to this kind of attention, and she didn't know if she was ready for love. But she knew one thing. Learning English had opened more than just professional doors. It was opening her heart to the world, to herself, and maybe to something she had never expected to find. Vocabulary highlights: B1, B2. Speech, discurso. Terrifying, aterrorizant. Stage, palco.
Lifeline, tábua de chalbacao. Burs, explodir, em aplausos, por exemplo.
Shaky, tremulo.
Honeste, honestidade.
Inspired, inspirado.
Sipa beat, pular uma batida, do coração.
Unexpected, inesperado. Emma's voice had reached the world, and something had answered back. The girl who once feared her accent was now speaking with purpose and passion. And in the middle of this new world, a quiet spark was beginning to burn. Not just in her future, but maybe in her heart. Waterwave Chapter 5, A Fork in the Road. The sun was setting when Emma opened the email that would change everything. She was sitting in the small co-working space of the Horizon Project, sipping herbal tea, reviewing materials for the weekend workshop. The air was filled with the smell of fresh wood, and voices from volunteers echoed softly in the background. It had been a long but beautiful day. When she saw the subject line, International Position Proposal, Education and Empowerment Project, Greece, her heart stopped for a second. She clicked. The message was from the European coordinator. They had watched her speech. They had read the impact reports of her workshops. They had seen the fire in her message. And now, they were offering her something new, a leadership position in an English-based project on a Greek island, starting in 4 weeks. She would train new volunteers, create lesson plans, speak publicly, in English, and it was paid. Her hands trembled slightly as she read the final line. We believe you are ready for the next level. Emma leaned back in her chair, trying to breathe. This was the kind of opportunity she had only dreamed about. A few months ago, she was hiding in language classes, afraid to speak. Now someone believed she could lead in English. But why did this incredible offer feel heavy? She looked out the window. The Lisbon streets were glowing under the golden light. This place had become her home. The people, her family. And Miguel, well, he had become something more than just a coworker. She hadn't told him about the offer.
Not yet.
That night, sleep didn't come easy. Her mind raced between excitement and fear. She imagined walking by the blue waters of Greece, running new workshops, teaching under the sun. But she also saw Miguel, laughing in the kitchen. Her students in Lisbon. The little routines she now loved. The next morning, as they walked together to a school event, she finally spoke. I need to tell you something, she said. Miguel looked at her gently. Okay. She took a deep breath. I've been offered a new position. In Greece. It's for another education project in English. I'd leave next month. There was silence. Only the soft sound of their steps on the cobblestones. Wow, he said. That's huge. She nodded. You deserve it, he added. But, she asked. He smiled weakly. But I'll miss you. Emma's heart sank and soared at the same time. This man, so calm and careful with words, had just said what she was afraid to feel. She didn't know what to say. So she just whispered, I'll miss you too. During the next days, Emma couldn't focus. Every person she helped, every child she taught, every moment she laughed with the team, it felt bittersweet, like she was already saying goodbye. She knew how hard she had worked for this, how much she had fought to grow, to speak up, to believe in herself. And yet, a quiet voice in her mind whispered, what are you running toward? And what are you running from? One afternoon, she sat alone by the ocean. The wind was strong, the sky a wild mix of orange and blue. She watched the waves crashing and thought about the girl she used to be, scared of everything, afraid of her accent, unsure of her place in the world. She wasn't that girl anymore. She could go to Greece. She could do great things. But what did she really want? That evening, Miguel found her by the old lighthouse, where the city met the sea. I had a feeling you'd be here, he said. Emma didn't speak. She just stared ahead. He sat beside her. I've been thinking, he said, maybe we're both scared of the same thing. She turned. What's that? Wanting something and not knowing if it will last. Her eyes filled. I don't want to lose what we've built here. Miguel took her hand. You don't have to decide tonight. But whatever you choose, make sure it's your choice. Not fear. Not pressure. Not expectations. Emma nodded. I just want to grow, she whispered. You already are, he said. And no matter where you go, that doesn't stop. 3 days later, Emma sent a reply to the email. She didn't say yes. She didn't say no. She asked for a meeting. She wanted to know if the project could start later, or if it was possible to bring some of her Lisbon students into the initiative. She wanted to include the life she had built in the next step, not erase it. For the first time, she wasn't choosing between two worlds. She was creating a bridge between them. Vocabulary highlights, B1, B2.
Leadership position, cargo de liderança.
Tremble, tremor. Bittersweet, agrados, com sentimentos mistos.
Soar, elevar-se, metaforicamente, como coração.
Cobblestones, paralelepípedos. Whisper, susurr. Crashing waves, ondas quebrando. Erase, apagar.
Build a bridge, construir uma ponte, figuradamente.
Emma had reached a crossroad, but she no longer felt lost. Her voice in English had become strong. Her choices had become her own. And perhaps, most beautifully, her heart was finally learning that it didn't have to choose between growth and love. It could carry both and speak both fluently. Waterwave Chapter 6, Rough Waters. 3 weeks later, Emma stepped off the ferry in Greece, with her heart pounding. The air smelled like salt and lemons, and the sun painted the sea a brilliant blue. It was beautiful, too beautiful for how nervous she felt inside. She was here now. The new project had begun. After several video calls, emails, and even a recorded presentation in English, the organization agreed to her ideas. Emma would join the new program, but only for 3 months at first. She could return to Lisbon after the trial period. It was the perfect compromise. Still, as she pulled her suitcase over the narrow stone streets of the island town, doubt crept in. Would she really be good enough? The school building was white and simple, with blue shutters and a small garden. Inside, everything smelled of paint and possibility. The team was young, international, and mostly fluent in English. Emma was the only one whose first language wasn't English, and the only one who had learned it as an adult. In the first meeting, she smiled a lot. She listened. She took notes. But she barely spoke. Her confidence from Lisbon seemed to have stayed behind. When someone asked her opinion, she gave short answers. She worried about making mistakes. The others moved quickly through ideas, jokes, and plans. Emma tried to keep up, but often felt lost in the speed of the conversations. On the second day, her supervisor pulled her aside. You're very capable, she said kindly, but we need you to speak up more. You have great ideas. Don't hide them. Emma smiled, embarrassed. I'm just still adjusting. The following week brought even more pressure. She was asked to lead a training session for 10 new volunteers. It would be in English. They came from all over Europe. Some were older. Some had experience. And all would be looking to her for direction. The night before the session, Emma barely slept. She practiced her lines, rewrote her slides, and stood in front of the mirror rehearsing every sentence. She kept thinking, what if they don't understand me? What if I forget words? What if I freeze? But when morning came, something shifted. She remembered her first day in Lisbon, her shaky voice, her quiet fear, and how, step by step, she had grown. Not perfectly, not fast, but honestly. She stood in front of the group, took a deep breath, and began. Hi, everyone. My name is Emma, and I know exactly how it feels to be nervous speaking English. Some heads nodded. I wasn't born with confidence. I built it, word by word. And today, we'll talk about how you can build it too, while helping others. As she spoke, her voice grew stronger. She saw people lean forward, take notes, smile. She used examples from her experience, asked questions, made space for people to share. By the end of the session, the room was alive with ideas and hope. When it finished, a young volunteer from Romania came up and said, "Thank you. You made me feel safe. You made me feel like I can do this." Emma almost cried. That had been her biggest goal, not to impress, but to empower. Still, not everything went smoothly. On her third week, there was a conflict between two team members. Misunderstandings about tasks, miscommunication, and suddenly, Emma was asked to mediate, in English, with people speaking fast, emotions high, and everyone expecting her to find a solution. She panicked for a second. How do I explain complex ideas? What if I say something wrong? But instead of rushing, she did what she had learned in Lisbon. She listened. She paused. She repeated back what she heard to make sure she understood. She stayed calm. It sounds like you both want to do your best, she said slowly, but the roles were not clear. Let's fix that together. It wasn't perfect, but it worked. After the meeting, one colleague said, Emma, you handled that better than anyone I know, in any language. That night, she called Miguel. His voice came through softly, like music from a distant room. I miss you, he said. I miss you too, she replied. He asked about her training, her team, the ocean view. She told him about the conflict and how she handled it. She told him about the compliments she had received. You're becoming a leader, he said. Emma smiled. I think I already am. There was a silence that didn't feel heavy. Then he asked, when are you coming back? I don't know yet, she said honestly. But I'm not running anymore. I'm growing. And he replied, I'll be here, cheering for you, wherever you are. In the fourth week, Emma was asked to give a presentation to local partners and sponsors, a mix of business owners, educators, and city officials. Again in English. This time she didn't panic. She wrote her speech in a quiet cafe by the beach, her feet in the sand, the wind in her hair. She practiced with other volunteers. She recorded herself and listened for mistakes. And when the day came, she stood proudly in front of them and said, My name is Emma. I came here as a learner. I stand here as a leader. And I speak not perfectly, but with passion. Because learning English gave me a voice. And now I use it to help others find theirs. The room applauded. She had done it. Not because she was fluent, but because she was brave. Vocabulary highlights. B1, B2.
Trial period. Período de teste.
Doubt crept in. A dúvida apareceu lentamente.
Pulsa muan azide. Chamar alguém para conversar em particular.
Rehearsing, enseñando. Empower, capacitor. Mediate, mediar.
Miscomunicação. Falta de comunicação clara. Cheering for you. Torcendo por você.
Emma no longer felt like a visitor in the English language. She lived in it now.
She worked in it.
She helped others grow through it. And most importantly, she had learned to trust herself. Not because she was fearless, but because she kept going even when afraid. And that, she knew, was real freedom. Sunset Chapter 7. Back to the City of Light. Emma stepped off the plane at Lisbon Airport with a strange feeling in her chest, not quite excitement, not quite fear. It had been 3 months since she left. Everything looked the same, yet nothing felt the same. Her phone buzzed.
Miguel, estou no estacionamento.
I'm waiting for you. She smiled. His message mixed Portuguese and English now, just like they often did in their conversations. A symbol of how far both of them had come. Driving through Lisbon, Emma watched the city unfold like a warm memory. The yellow trams, the tiled walls, the steep cobblestone streets. Bem-vindo de volta, Miguel said, his hand briefly touching hers. They passed the Avenida de Liberdade, where people sat in cafes under the shade of trees. Tourists held maps, laughing. Locals moved with purpose. Emma used to be one of them, rushing to work, avoiding eye contact, hiding in her thoughts. Now, she looked out the window like a traveler discovering a new land. That afternoon, they walked together through Alfama, the oldest district in the city. It was full of winding alleys, old women watering flowers on balconies, and the sound of distant fado music. At a viewpoint called Miraduro de Santa Luzia, they paused. I used to come here when I felt lost, Emma said. And now, I feel found. Miguel looked at her carefully. You've changed.
Juok taller.
You speak with fire. Emma laughed. It's called confidence. I had to travel across the sea to find it. Later that day, she met with her old manager and a few colleagues from the education center. You're glowing, one of them said. Greece was good for you, said another. They sat at a cafe near the Praça do Comércio, the big open square by the river. The conversation turned serious. Emma, her manager began, we'd love to have you back.
Full-time.
In fact, we're offering you a new role. You'd lead the international training program. Emma felt the weight of the offer settle on her shoulders. It was a big step, a secure job, in the city she loved, with people she trusted. But something inside her hesitated. That night, she walked alone through the Bicicciato district. She passed the elevator de Santa Justa, lit up against the night sky, and climbed it slowly. At the top, she looked out over Lisbon, the city that raised her, the city that once held her fears. She remembered walking those same streets months ago, afraid to speak up. She had been a dreamer with no clear voice. Now she was being invited to lead. But she also remembered the island, the volunteers, the waves, the nights she had spent listening to the ocean and writing new ideas. Could she go back to her old life? Or had she become someone new? The next morning, Miguel took her to Belém. They visited the Geronimo's monastery, walked by the Discoveries Monument, and watched the boats sail past the Belém Tower. As they sat on a bench eating pastéis de nata, Miguel finally asked, What do you want, Emma? Not what's safe. Not what people expect. What you want. She looked at him, surprised by the question, and even more by the answer that rose so clearly in her heart. I want to continue building something that matters. I want to keep helping people through language. And I want to lead, but not in the old way.
Miguel nodded slowly.
So, what does that mean? Emma pulled a folded paper from her bag, a rough plan for an online training program. She had written it late one night in Greece. It would connect volunteers, educators, and learners from different countries. It would offer free English support, cultural exchange, and leadership training, all virtual, all flexible. I think it's time to start something of my own, she said. The idea scared her. It was risky. She had never run a project alone before. But the thought of going back to a familiar system, of staying small, felt heavier than the fear. Emma had outgrown her old path. Now she was ready to create a new one. Later that day, as she stood on the 25 de Abril bridge, looking out at the Tagus River, the wind caught her hair and the sun warmed her face. She thought about how language had opened this journey, about the people she had met, the things she had survived, the woman she had become. She took a deep breath. I don't have all the answers, she whispered, but I have a voice, and I'm going to use it. Her phone buzzed again. New email. Subject: Funding opportunity. International Youth Projects. Emma smiled. The journey wasn't ending. It was just beginning again, this time on her own terms. Vocabulary highlights: B1, B2.
Unfold, se desenrolar, acontecer.
Glowing, radiant. Settle on someone's shoulders. Pesar sobre os ombros, figurativamente. Hesitate, hesitar.
Familiar system, sistema já conhecido. Outrove, ter superado, ter crescido além de.
Rough planned, plano preliminar.
Honrar termos, do seu próprio jeito.
Emma realized something powerful. It's not about going back or staying still. It's about continuing to move toward who you are becoming. And this time, she would go forward not as a follower, not as someone waiting for permission, but as a creator of her own path. Glow Showing Europe Africa Chapter 8. The First Stone. The days after Emma's return to Greece were filled with a storm of energy and questions. She had made a decision to start her own project. But now came the hard part, turning an idea into something real. Her plan was simple in theory: create a virtual platform for volunteers, educators, and learners to connect across borders. It would offer English classes, cultural exchange, and leadership workshops. Everything would be online, flexible, and focused on empowerment through language. But the moment she sat down to build it, the doubts came. Where do I begin? What if no one joins? What if I fail? She opened her laptop and stared at a blank screen. One tab was open to a free website builder. Another was a spreadsheet. Another was an email draft to a possible sponsor. And another was a job application. Emma sighed. Part of her still wanted something safe, a steady income, a predictable path. But deep down, she knew going back was not an option. Later that day, she met Lena, her Greek friend from the volunteer center, at a beach cafe. "You look tired," Lena said, handing her a fresh orange juice. "I feel like I'm building a castle with no tools," Emma admitted. "That's normal. But start with the first stone. Just one." Emma smiled, remembering something her grandmother used to say in Portuguese.
Pedra por pedra se levanta uma casa.
Stone by stone, a house is built. Inspired by Lena's words, Emma spent the next 3 days focused. She created a name for the platform: Bridge Voice, a place to build bridges through language. She designed a simple logo, a speech bubble in the shape of a bridge. She launched a social media page, wrote the first blog post, uploaded a short video explaining the mission, created an email for signups. And slowly, people started responding. A woman in Turkey, a teenager in Kenya, a retired teacher in Canada, a single mom in Brazil. They wrote, "I want to teach. I want to learn. I want to belong." Emma felt her heart expand. It was working, but with success came pressure. One morning, she received an email from the Youth Project Fund she had applied to. "We are interested in your proposal. Please submit the full business plan by Friday at 5 p.m. It was Tuesday. She had only written the introduction. Panic set in. She skipped lunch, canceled dinner, worked through the night. The next morning, she woke up with a headache and blurry eyes. "I'm not ready for this," she whispered. Miguel called that evening. "You disappeared," he said, half joking. "I'm drowning in work," she answered. "Do you want help?" There was a pause. Emma hated asking for help. It made her feel weak. "But this time," she said.
Yes.
"Please." Miguel spent hours with her on video call, reviewing her plan. "You need to make it human," he said. "Tell them why it matters. Don't just list numbers." They reworked the introduction together. He helped translate parts into Portuguese. She rewrote the mission statement 3 times. When Friday came, Emma hit send 5 minutes before the deadline. And then she cried, not from fear, but from relief. The next morning, Emma walked alone to the hill above the village. The sea below sparkled like glass. She sat on a rock and closed her eyes. For months, she had been learning how to speak up, how to teach, how to lead. But now, she was learning something even harder: how to believe in herself when no one was watching. That afternoon, her phone buzzed again. New message. From a woman named Ananya, in India. "I want to help teach English. I've never taught before, but I'm a fast learner. Do you think I can do it?" Emma smiled as she typed her reply.
Yes.
You absolutely can. That's why Bridge Voice exists. She hit send and paused. Helping others believe in themselves was easy. Now she just needed to keep believing in her own power, too. Vocabulary highlights, B1, B2. Empowerment, fortalecimento, empoderamento.
Blank screen, tela em branco. Panic setting, o pânico se instalou.
Reworked, retrabalhar, revisor.
Hit send, clicar em enviar. Fast learner, quem aprende rápido.
Predictable path, caminho previsível.
Stiad income, renda estável.
Emma had taken the first step. Now came the hardest part. Continuing, even when the way was unclear. But step by step, stone by stone. She was building something that might one day change lives. And in doing so, she was changing her own. Glow Showing Europe Africa, Chapter 9. Voices from Different Worlds. Emma couldn't believe it. In just 2 weeks, Bridge Voice had grown from a blurry idea to a living, breathing community. She now had volunteers from 8 different countries, people of all ages, speaking different languages, holding different beliefs, but sharing one goal: to connect, learn, and grow. But excitement quickly gave way to confusion. On Monday morning, Emma hosted the first online team meeting. There were 11 people on the screen from Egypt, Colombia, Germany, Thailand, Nigeria, Canada, Portugal, and beyond. Everyone smiled and waved. Some held coffee cups. Others sat in noisy homes. One woman joined from her phone, sitting in a market. Emma tried to speak clearly, using simple English. Thank you all for being here. I want to begin by talking about the weekly class schedule. Suddenly, a man named Tariq, from Jordan, interrupted.
Wait.
Who makes the decisions here? Is there a voting process? Emma blinked, surprised. Well, I created the project, so I'm organizing the flow. But I'd love to hear everyone's input. Another voice jumped in, Luisa from Spain. I think we need structure. Clear rules. This is too informal. Then Alex, a young man from Kenya, added. But this isn't a company. This is a movement. We should be more flexible. Soon, voices overlapped. The energy turned chaotic. Emma's hands got sweaty. Her heart raced. She had wanted diversity, but now it felt like she had opened a door to a room she wasn't ready to enter. That evening, she called Lena. I feel like a captain of a boat in a storm, Emma confessed. Lena laughed kindly. It's normal. Leading a global team is like learning a new language, full of misunderstandings. Emma nodded. I didn't expect the cultural clashes. Exactly, Lena said. In some cultures, leaders make decisions. In others, everyone votes. Some people want structure. Others want freedom. You have to create a space where all voices feel respected. That night, Emma stayed up reflecting. She opened a notebook and wrote one word, bridge. Then she circled it. Bridges don't erase differences, they connect them. The next day, she sent a group message. Let's build this project together. We all come from different places. That's our strength, not our problem. I'll propose a structure. You give feedback. We'll keep adjusting until we find balance. To her relief, the responses were positive. Tariq wrote, Thank you. That's all I wanted. Luisa added, This message shows real leadership. Alex posted, Let's keep growing together. Emma smiled. She was learning not to control, but to guide. But just as things calmed in her project, something else became complicated.
Miguel.
They hadn't spoken much in the past week. He had messaged, but she was always busy. Meetings, emails, planning. One evening he sent, I feel like you've disappeared. Are we still part of the same story? Emma stared at the screen. They had started as 2 dreamers walking on the sand. But now, they were in different places emotionally and physically.
She didn't know how to reply.
Later that night, Miguel called. I miss you, he said. But I don't want to fight for your time. Emma was quiet. I'm proud of you, he continued. But I wonder, where do I fit in this new version of your life? Her throat tightened. She didn't want to lose him. But she also didn't want to lose herself. The next morning, she walked through a small Greek village to clear her mind. The streets were quiet, lined with white houses and blue doors. Elderly women watered flowers. A cat stretched in the sun. She sat by the sea and thought, can you grow without leaving people behind? Can you follow your dream and still hold on to love? No answers came, only more questions. But for now, that was okay. Because real growth, she was learning, didn't come from having all the answers, but from being brave enough to ask the right questions. That afternoon, she returned home and messaged Miguel. You are part of my story, but I need time to find out who I am becoming. I hope we can grow, side by side, even if not always hand in hand. He replied minutes later. That's fair. I'll be here, cheering for you, even from a distance. Emma exhaled. It hurt, but it also felt honest. That night, another message arrived. This time from a teacher in the Philippines. I just taught my first English class through Bridge Voice. My student is a woman in rural India. We laughed, we struggled, but we understood each other. Thank you for creating this space. Emma put down her phone and smiled through tears. She was building a bridge, one connection at a time. Vocabulary highlights, V1, V2. Clashes, chokes, conflitos.
Structure e estrutura. Feedback, retorno, opinião.
Guide, guiar, orientar. Emotionally, emotionalment.
Hand in hand, de mãos dadas.
Side by side, lado a lado.
Connection, conexão, ligação.
Emma was no longer just a language student. She was now a bridge builder, between cultures, between ideas, and between the past and the future. The next chapter of her life was being written in courage, not fear. One conversation at a time. Portugal Chapter 10. Back to the beginning. The plane touched down in Lisbon just after sunrise. As Emma stepped onto the warm pavement, the air smelled like roasted coffee and sea salt. A soft breeze kissed her face. She hadn't been here since the beginning of her journey. But now, everything was different. She wasn't the same woman who had walked along the beach months ago, dreaming of changing her life. She was changing it. A week earlier, she had received an invitation from the organizers of an international education conference in Lisbon. They had seen her project online and wanted her to speak about Bridge Voice.
At first, she laughed. Me?
A speaker?
She almost declined.
Her hands shook just reading the email. But then she remembered how far she'd come, the fears she'd already faced, the voices she had helped connect. She wrote back,
Yes.
I'll be there. Now, walking through the streets of Lisbon, everything felt surreal. She passed by Praça do Comércio, the large square by the river. Tourists took selfies in front of the big yellow buildings. Street musicians played soft fado music. She sat on a bench, watching the boats drift slowly along the Rio Tejo. This was where it all started. Her desire for change, her decision to learn English, and the long, silent evenings reading phrases out loud. Later, she climbed the hills of Alfama, where clotheslines hung between buildings and children kicked balls in tiny alleys. She stopped at a small cafe and ordered a pastel de nata. Café por favor, she told the waiter with a smile. Her Portuguese was still basic, but she wasn't afraid to speak anymore. She had learned something more powerful than vocabulary: confidence. The night before the event, she couldn't sleep. She walked along Belém Tower, the moonlight bouncing off the river. Her heart was full of questions. What if I freeze? What if they laugh at my accent? What if I sound small? She looked up at the stars and whispered, but what if I inspire someone? What if my voice helps another woman believe in herself? What if I was born for this moment? The next morning, she stood backstage, wearing a simple white dress and holding a microphone in trembling hands. The crowd was big. People from over 20 countries sat waiting. She took a deep breath and walked into the light. Hi, she began, her voice soft but clear. My name is Emma. A year ago, I couldn't speak like this. I was afraid. I felt stuck. But something inside me said, learn the language of your dreams. The room was silent. She smiled, looked around, and continued. I created Bridge Voice to connect people who feel small, because I was one of them. I believed that if we could learn together, we could grow together. Then she told stories. About Lena, about Miguel, about teaching English to a woman in India while sitting in a cafe in Greece. She shared her failures, her accent, her doubts, the cultural conflicts. She ended with, "We don't need to be perfect. We just need to begin." Language is not just grammar. It's courage. And courage doesn't need permission, only action. The room erupted in applause. Some people stood. Others wiped away tears. Emma stood still, shocked. Then, for the first time in her life, she truly felt proud. After the event, people surrounded her. A man from Japan said, "You gave me hope to start again." A woman from Morocco whispered, "Your words reminded me who I was before I gave up." A young Brazilian hugged her tightly and said, "Thank you for showing us it's possible." That evening, she walked to Miradouro de Senhora do Monte, one of Lisbon's highest viewpoints. The city stretched beneath her, red rooftops, tram lines, shining windows. Miguel messaged, "I saw the speech online. You were brilliant. Whether together or apart, I'll always admire your strength." Emma smiled through tears. She replied, "Thank you. I still care about you deeply. But for now, I must keep walking my own path." She looked out over the city and whispered, "I made it. Not perfectly, not quickly, but honestly." She took a photo of the sunset, captioned it, "The view is clearer from the top of your fears." Vocabulary highlights, B1, B2. Invitation, convite. Freeze, travar, paralyzer. Applause, applausos. Courage, coragem. Surreal, surreal.
Proud, orgulhosa. Viewpoint, miradouro, ponto de vista.
Emma had conquered the stage, not because she was fearless, but because she walked forward anyway. And that, she realized, was the true language of freedom. Portugal Chapter 11. The Road Home? A week after the conference in Lisbon, Emma was still receiving messages, emails,
Comments.
invitations. Her inbox overflowed with people who had seen her talk. They wanted to know more about Bridge Voice. Some wanted interviews. Others asked for advice on learning English. But one message stood out. It was from the Ministry of Education in her home country. They had watched her speech. They were interested in bringing Bridge Voice to public schools in rural areas, where many students had no access to language teachers or online tools. The message said, "Your story inspired us. We believe your platform could bring hope and opportunity to thousands of students who feel forgotten. Would you be open to returning home and building this project with our support?" Emma sat in silence. Return home? The word home felt both warm and heavy. That night, she walked along the Avenida de Liberdade, thinking. Lisbon sparkled with life, cafes buzzing, lights glowing in the trees. She had found a rhythm here. Freedom. Purpose. Movement. Was she ready to give that up? Or was this a chance to expand her mission? She called Lena. "Should I go back?" she asked. Lena paused. "Emma, your roots matter. But so do your wings. Ask yourself, where will you grow more?" Then she added, "Don't go because they finally see your value. Go only if you know who you are without needing their approval." Emma wiped her eyes. Lena always spoke truth like a mirror. A few days later, Emma took a train to Sintra to clear her mind. The colorful Palacio de Pena sat high on the hill, surrounded by mist and forest. She walked the stone paths slowly, breathing the fresh mountain air. As she stood overlooking the valley, she whispered, "Do I want to return to the place I once ran away from?" Suddenly, she remembered her old classroom, cracked walls, broken desks, tired students. And yet, she also remembered their eyes. Curious.
Bright.
Full of quiet dreams. Maybe this wasn't about going backward. Maybe it was about planting seeds where others only saw dust. Back in Lisbon, she met Miguel one last time. They sat in Jardim da Estrela, under a giant fig tree. He brought her a small notebook with the words, "Words create worlds," printed on the cover. "You'll know what to do," he said. "Just don't stop writing your story." That evening, Emma packed her suitcase. Not with sadness, but with intention. This wasn't goodbye to freedom. It was a new kind of journey, one that honored her roots and her growth. She boarded the plane as the sky turned golden. As she looked out the window, she whispered, "Let's bring the voice back home." 2 months later, Emma stood in a dusty school courtyard in a small village. Children in worn uniforms stared at her with wide eyes. She smiled and said slowly, "Hello, my name is Emma. Today, we'll begin a new adventure in English." A few kids giggled. One brave girl raised her hand. "Teacher, will I be able to talk to people in other countries?" Emma knelt beside her. "Yes," she said. "And one day, you might even help someone else learn." The girl grinned. And in that moment, Emma knew she had made the right choice. Vocabulary highlights: B1, B2. Overwhelmed, sobrecarregada. Roots, raízes. Approval, aproveito.
Mist, névoa.
Intention, intenqueo.
Worn uniformes, uniformes gastos.
Seed, semeni. Emma returned, not because she needed to prove something, but because her voice now carried the power to plant hope where others had forgotten to look. Portugal Chapter 12. Between Papers and People. Emma's return to her home country was quiet. No cameras, no welcome signs. Just her, a suitcase, a laptop, and a mission. She had accepted the invitation from the Ministry of Education. But as soon as she arrived, she understood. Saying yes to a dream is one thing. Making that dream real is another. On her first day at the ministry office, Emma wore a navy blue blouse and brought a clear folder with all her project plans. She waited in a room with beige walls, surrounded by serious faces in suits. A man with glasses read her resume. "So, you taught English online and now you want to change our national system?" His tone wasn't aggressive, but it wasn't welcoming either. Emma smiled calmly. "I'm not here to change the system. I'm here to add something new to it. To give students in rural areas the same chances others have." Another official leaned forward. "But many of these children don't even have internet. How will they join your program?" Emma opened her folder and began to explain. She had spent weeks designing a hybrid model. Offline materials that could be printed weekly and taken home by students. USB drives with recorded English audio lessons that could be used on any basic computer or smart TV. And a system where young volunteers, trained by Emma, could visit schools weekly to practice speaking with the students. It wasn't perfect, but it was possible. Still, the officials looked at each other with doubt. "We will review your proposal," one of them said. Emma nodded. She had expected this. Dreams take more than passion, they take patience. In the following weeks, she visited schools in small towns. Some had broken windows. Others had no proper heating or air conditioning. In one school, the principal gave her a list of missing teachers. They had 5 classes and only 2 educators. But Emma also saw something else. She saw children raising their hands with excitement. She saw teachers who worked extra hours without pay. She saw potential, raw and real. In one classroom, a boy named Tiago said, "I want to be a pilot." "But pilots speak English, right?" Emma smiled.
Yes.
"And if you start now, one day, you'll fly above these mountains." His eyes lit up. At night, she worked late, adjusting the curriculum, rewriting the guides in simpler English, recording new audio files. She rented a small apartment with old wooden floors and a view of the bus station. Sometimes, she missed Lisbon's lights, the sound of the sea, the freedom of anonymity. Now she was home, but it felt like a new world. A world of politics, documents, and resistance. 3 weeks later, she received an email. The pilot project had been approved, but only for 3 schools. Emma was disappointed at first. Just 3? But then she remembered her own words. You don't need thousands to begin. You need one. One voice. One classroom. One chance. So she accepted. And she gave those 3 schools everything she had. She trained 5 local volunteers, young adults who were unemployed but eager to grow. She told them, "You don't need to be perfect in English. You just need to care." She taught them how to pronounce key phrases. how to encourage shy students, how to use storytelling and games to teach language. They met in cafes, parks, and small libraries. They practiced speaking like this. Hello, my name is Carla. Where do you live? Do you like chocolate? Simple sentences, but powerful beginnings. On the first day of the pilot, Emma visited a school in the mountains. It was raining. The windows fogged up. Children wore coats in the classroom. Still, they sat waiting, curious, hopeful. Emma walked in and greeted them in English. The children looked at her. One brave boy stood up and said, "Good morning." Emma laughed gently.
Yes.
That's perfect. Then another girl whispered, "Teacher, how do you say dream in English?" Emma wrote it on the board.
Dream.
Then she turned to them and said, "This word is why we're here today." Vocabulary highlights, B1, B2. Proposal, proposta. Hybrid, hybrido.
Currículum, plano de aula, currículo.
Raw, bruto, puro. Pilot project, progetto piloto. Resistance, resistencia. Anonymity, anonimato. Emma realized something important. Changing systems is slow. Changing people is powerful. And changing yourself is the beginning of everything. Portugal Chapter 13. When seeds start to bloom. 3 months had passed since the first lesson. 3 months of bus rides to distant villages. 3 months of saying the same phrases again and again. 3 months of wondering if her work was making any difference. And then something changed. It was a cold Tuesday morning. Emma arrived at one of the pilot schools, expecting another quiet class. But as she walked through the gate, she heard it. Voices. Laughter. And English? She followed the sound to the playground. There, a group of children was playing a game. In full English. Jump. Pass the ball. You're it. Emma stood still, surprised. One of the volunteer teachers approached her with a big smile. They've started using English when they play, she said. They say it's their secret language. Emma's eyes filled with tears. This wasn't just language. This was confidence. This was belonging. This was growth. That same week, she visited another school and saw drawings on the wall. Crayon pictures of airplanes, cities, oceans. Under each picture, a sentence. My name is Joao. I want to be a pilot. I am Maria. I love books. I dream big. Emma asked the teacher, who had done this. It was their idea, the teacher said. They said, if we speak English, we can show the world who we are. Emma felt her heart swell. The seeds she had planted were starting to bloom. The ministry called her in for a follow-up. She presented her results. Attendance had improved. Students were more motivated. Even teachers were asking for English training. One official asked, "Do you think this model could be expanded to more schools?" Emma nodded. With the right support, yes. But it's not about technology. It's about connection. The room was quiet. Then the director said, "We'd like to expand the project to 20 more schools next semester." Emma smiled and exhaled. This was real. This was happening. But later that night, sitting in her apartment, she felt a strange emptiness. She looked around the small space. Same walls. Same desk. Same cup of tea. She whispered to herself, "What now?" She had come home.
She had built something.
She had made a difference. But a part of her missed the unknown. Missed airports. Missed discovering new cultures. Missed the version of herself that wasn't always fighting bureaucracy. She video called Lena. "I'm proud," she said. "But I feel like something's missing again." Lena replied gently, "Maybe it's not about choosing one path. Maybe your life will always be a balance of two things, roots and wings." Emma nodded. That night, she opened her old travel journal. She flipped through pages filled with train tickets, pressed flowers, and handwritten reflections. One line caught her eye. "The world is a classroom. The journey is the lesson." The next morning, she received a message. It was from a small organization in Kenya. They had seen her conference video from Lisbon. They worked with girls in remote villages, many of whom had no access to formal education. They asked if Bridge Voice could be adapted to their needs. Emma stared at the screen. A new continent. A new challenge. A new classroom. She didn't answer right away. She closed her laptop. She made tea. She watched the sunrise. And she whispered, "Let's see where the voice wants to go next." Vocabulary highlights, B1, B2. Follow-up, accompanimento.
Belonging, sentimento de pertencimiento. Swell, emotionally, encherse, emocionarse. Bloom, florescer. Roots and wings, raízes e asas.
Whispered, sussurro. Emma had created something beautiful, but her heart was still curious, still open. She had learned that you can make a difference and still choose to keep learning, moving, growing. Because the voice inside you, it never stops searching for new ways.